Oi, oi, it's your boy, the Ghislaine Maxwell of Speaking the Facts Well, Jack Slack. It's the Jack Slack podcast, coming at you on Monday, the 25th of April. My voice is shot again because I had another big night out. It's, am I becoming a problem? Do I need an intervention from my listeners? Who knows? But I did manage to watch all the fights, so we have stuff to talk about, which is good. I think I'll probably start with Tyson Fury versus Dillian Whyte, because there was... While almost every fight company in MMA held an event this weekend, it was very much filler cards because they didn't want to go up against Tyson Fury's title fight in Wembley. This whole thing, like now Tyson Fury's saying he's retiring, and to be fair, he retires every other week. He's retired more times than Terry Funk, but you do get the sense that that's just got to be how heavyweight boxing is. You will never get the big unification fight you want, because there's always got to be at least two people running a grift, and it's helped by their promoters desperately trying to run a grift. But good for Dillian Whyte, because he was he'd been like in position to be mandatory challenger a couple of times for different belts, because the way that the rankings in boxing work is that it's a grift, but mainly there are four main governing bodies: WBA, WBC, IBS, no, IBF, and I can't remember the other one. Oh, WBO. Yeah, sorry, WBO, WBA, WBC, and IBF. And Deontay, what basically the way it works is that the champion will not be ranked in another organization's rankings, but they will tend to give priority if you get the fight together. They'll say, like, you don't have to worry about your mandatory challenger a lot of the time. Sometimes they won't, and they'll fine you or ask you to drop the title, which is just, this whole thing is how boxing turned to shit. But Dillian Whyte has been in multiple of these rankings near the top for quite a while, waiting to get title shots at people. And I think he got Q jumped for Joshua's titles by Usyk, because Usyk came up from cruiserweight and he already had a couple of the cruiserweight belts, or maybe all of them, I can't even remember, but they basically, the governing body said, yeah, well, of course we'll make an exception for Usyk, and Dillian Whyte got dropped down the rankings. It's not even everyone's favourite Dillian. It's good to see him get his chance at last. Had absolutely nothing for Tyson Fury. Dillian Whyte is mainly just a monstrously sized man with that winky right sort of arm length, where even when his arms are like coiled in his guard, his elbows are almost at his knees rather than down by his hips. But yeah, Tyson Fury worked him over, did the job, got the knockout. What was interesting in this fight? I mean, interesting was that Dillian Whyte came out for the first round southpaw, which I've seen a lot of people say was a shit decision. I've seen a lot more people say the more reasonable decision, which is to go, he didn't really do anything. He stood southpaw and didn't really do anything with it, which, in fairness to him, is something that Tyson Fury did earlier in his career. His first fight with Derek Chisora. Oh, no, actually, I think it was his second fight with Derek Chisora, but he came out southpaw, and in fairness to him, he didn't look amazing from southpaw either. So the idea that you're going to train someone up to be a killer southpaw overnight for one fight is always suspect, but you can use the southpaw stance to, not just surprise your opponent, but there are certain advantages to going southpaw, particularly against a great orthodox fighter with a great left hand, which is what Fury was facing in Chisora. A lot of Chisora's game is the big left hook. If you put yourself southpaw, firstly, you're putting your lead shoulder in the way of that left hook. Every time you you get down behind your lead shoulder, like you do when you're panicking or cowering. When you've made a bad decision and you're going, oh fuck, I'm out of position. You'd get down behind your lead shoulder. If you're orthodox versus orthodox, you're still there for the left hook. If you're southpaw versus orthodox, your lead shoulder will get in the way of that, and your back if you turn your back. As Tyson Fury's lead shoulder was doing against Dillian Whyte's right hand in this fight. But against a really good jabber, if you go southpaw and they're orthodox, you can put your lead hand on their lead hand and just bat it down every time. Try and make it harder for them to jab you by physically impeding their jab. And through that first round, Dillian Whyte didn't have much trouble with the jab, and it could have been the plan. They said, go out southpaw, cover his jab, till you've got a bit of a read on him, then switch back to normal. They didn't seem to be saying in the corner, like, go back to southpaw. Maybe the plan was to jump on him from southpaw and try and knock him out early because the big left hand is Dillian Whyte's bread and butter. But he didn't go for it. Like, he wasn't pushing after Fury in that first round. It really did look like he was just getting information, doing reconnaissance, as the commentator kept saying on the British broadcast. But we've talked about this quite recently, actually, because they switched Aspen Ladd southpaw for her last fight. And I said, Aspen Ladd has a pretty good orthodox left hook, especially in women's MMA. And they switched to southpaw so that her power hand was in the back. And every time she threw her left straight, it looked rubbish because she'd not practiced it very much. And then anytime she got hit, lost sight of whatever the game plan was supposed to be and just started swinging back. She went back to her orthodox stance and hit the girl with good left hooks. So having a massive left hand from orthodox does not mean that you're going to carry that over into like a twice as dangerous southpaw left hand without an awful lot of training and practice. But then the rest of the fight was just Dillian Whyte failing to corner Tyson Fury. And when he did get in close, Tyson Fury would either like hit him with a check hook and pull him in, or just throw his arms over Dillian Whyte's shoulders and pull him in by a headlock. And once again, it's just demonstrating like dudes in boxing do not know how to deal with the clinch. It's very much a lost art. If you watch Floyd Mayweather's career, firstly, he picks a ref in Kenny Bayless who will immediately break the fight. He'll go, hey, stop, break, and then he'll give them a few seconds in the clinch before he forces them apart. So like he'll tell the guy to stop hitting, and then they'll be there a while, and then he'll separate them. And also, almost immediately, when Floyd throws his arms over someone's shoulders, Kenny Bayless is like, stop the fight. But when you see Floyd's tougher fights, Maidana won because it's ref by, is it Joe Bird? What's his name? Can't remember. But a good ref who lets people work in the clinch, and Maidana just sort of spazzes out in the clinch and beats him up. And in the rematch, Floyd makes sure to get Kenny Bayless in as the ref for that one. But the Miguel Cotto fight is a great example because Miguel Cotto actually knows what he's fucking doing in a clinch, and so many people don't. Manny Pacquiao doesn't know how to stop someone throwing their arms around him. Whereas you watch Miguel Cotto against Mayweather, the top of his head is always in Mayweather's chin, basically. Like, keep his chest away from Mayweather's, and he starts hitting the body from the inside. If you can put your head in front of someone, the head post, we're always talking about with Leon Edwards, if you put your head in front of someone's, or under someone's jaw, and push back so that your hips and shoulders your chest and hips come away from them, you have room enough to start throwing little uppercuts to the body that are actually pretty good uppercuts to the body. If you watch someone like Joe Frazier on the bag, when he puts his forehead on the bag and starts digging those little elbows along the sides of his body, uppercuts, you can actually start to do damage there. And that would have helped Chisora to be able to do that. But instead, he's trying to like load up right swings over the top of Fury's hug, and it's just not working. So then he starts headbutting him and jumping him with his shoulders, and Tyson Fury's like waltzing around the ring, screaming at the ref, he's trying to butt me. And there was a cut open by a butt in the course of the fight. I know it was a butt because Dillian Whyte barely ever hit him. But the battle lines were drawn early. It was Dillian Whyte had to get him to the ropes, and he couldn't. And it was pretty impressive to watch because Tyson Fury is an enormous man, and so is Dillian Whyte. And they took up almost all of the ring, and he still never managed to get him to the ropes properly without getting tied up. And then it was just the standard Fury game plan, pump faking jabs, hitting with legitimate jabs, slapping left hooks around the side to line up the right straight down the centre, and good right hands to the body every now and again, Rarely combinations of more than like 2 or 3 punches. But there was a great moment in round 2 or 3 where Tyson Fury said, like, I'm going to do southpaw now, because he went from orthodox, he went jab, right hook to the body, left hook upstairs, and Whyte like pivoted around his foot away from Fury, and Fury just followed him back with another 1-2 southpaw. He like let him drift in front of him and came in southpaw. It was really nice. But mainly, yeah, it's just the clinch killing all of Whyte's offense, and the jabs and the feints killing Whyte's counterpunching and beating him up. And this is the thing, Tyson Fury, I'm thinking of something that Kyle McLaughlin shared this week. It was John Fury going, Tyson is an example to everyone who's not built like an athlete and doesn't have all the physical advantages in the world. he's got some blubber hanging off his waist, but he's still one of the most physically gifted heavyweights of all time. He's 6'9", and he doesn't move like he's 6'9" at all. He moves faster than most of the people he fights, and he's got the best reach, and he's got an incredible chin. And the most important thing with Tyson Fury is that he's actually got the eyes for it. You know, he can see these guys punching at him, and these guys are like reacting wildly to every flinch that he shows them. This is why I don't give a shit about him versus giants anymore. Because there is a point when being a giant does matter. You can watch that with when AJ fights people like Povetkin. Legitimate heavyweight looks tiny next to AJ. And it was the same with him and Dillian Whyte, actually. But Dillian Whyte managed to lose that first one to Povetkin. But yeah, it was that point where we were going, oh, you know, you've got to be certainly a certain amount of gigantic to pass at heavyweight anymore, because all these guys are like 250, 260. Certainly not getting Rocky Marciano in there or Jack Dempsey at like 180 pounds. But then Usyk has come up from cruiserweight, looked smallish against Joshua, but made up for it with his speed, and his power looked fine. He took Joshua's shots well enough. So I'm like, I'd rather see Usyk versus Fury, and I would always have rather seen that, because one, Usyk is amazing, and two, unify the fucking titles. But more than that, I want to see someone with real speed against Tyson Fury, because he's been making it look easy against these guys who just can't keep up with him. And when we're talking about like having the eyes for it, like him seeing stuff coming, he gets away from things defensively, but also when he gets hit, he turns with things. He doesn't get hit that badly. We talked about it the other week. I said it's like the difference between two people running into each other and running after someone and trying to kick them in the arse as they're running away. And that's what trying to hit Tyson Fury is like a lot of the time. So if he's retired, bit shit, to be honest. Really wanted that Usyk fight or the AJ fight. I mean, it is possible that AJ beats Usyk and we have the title unifier between them, or, you know, it's not possible we have the title unifier, because everything possible will be done to keep that two-man grift going. Got to have two world champions all the time. Just the whole thing with this big, you know, the big full English title fight at Wembley. You're like, we could have had the big full English, lol. We could have had the English title unifier in Wembley. The only thing stopping it was people's greed and the need to perpetuate this bollocks forever. So that was the big fight this weekend. Now I'm going to do some kind of stupid Tyson Fury thumbnail for this podcast, because I always do. The UFC was Jessica Andrade versus Amanda Lemos. It's really funny pre-fight stuff. Firstly, my reaction was, that's your main event, bro? It's just a pretty fucking weak card. But Jessica Andrade, she's always been my girl. I remember her throwing around, watching her live, throwing around Rosie Sexton in London. But even before that, she was tiny, and they only had bantamweight in the UFC, and she was beating up these bigger lasses, just throwing them around. She's always been... This is the thing, like, in this episode, I'm going to say something like it's not a very big Hall of Fame in WMMA so far, but she's got to be in there. You know, wins at 3 weight classes, a world championship at one point. And, you know, you can say, like, no, she's not one of the best ever in terms of skill. And I think if WMMA does actually improve eventually across the board, she'll get left behind. But there's nothing against there's no rule that prevents you from using your physical attributes in fighting. In fact, you should be using them all the time. Tyson Fury isn't going to like let you into the fight with him. He's going to continue to box magnificently, but he's going to keep you on the end of his range and jab you up. So why shouldn't Jessica Andrade use her beastly farm girl strength? Yes, her boxing's trash. We've talked about this for years. She would be a very scary fighter if she had a boxing coach who could even impart some knowledge onto her, or a kickboxing coach. She was using the inside low kick in this one, which is the one that I've been begging for her to use for years. You know, if she'd had an inside low kick that she then followed up on, she just did the Dan Henderson combination and nothing else against Joanna Jędrzejczyk, she would have brought herself into that fight like 100% more than she was in it originally. She was just following her around to the left the entire fight. And to be fair, even when she was doing that like ludicrous head movement and bouncing around against Rose Namajunas in their second fight, she did way better on the feet than in the first fight. But mostly what she does is she has a monstrous left hook, which isn't very technically or mechanically slick. You could train that to be much better and much scarier. She just had this mad clubbing power. She hit Rose once in the rematch, and she hit Joanna Jędrzejczyk once in their fight. Blew their eyes up, like they just swelled up. But a lot of what she does is like grab a hold of people and slam them. That fight with Gedalia was hilarious. Great take this week from someone on Reddit. I don't like seeing people like Andrade, parenthesis, obviously on roids, beating up clean fighters like Rose Namajunas, Karolina Kowalkiewicz, and Claudia Gedalia. And he went, wait, hold up? Claudia Gedalia. I mean, if Gedalia, if she was clean, good for her. But if she wasn't, you had to go like, get off the big muscle ones and get on to the big cardio ones. And on the subject of that, only one person in this fight had failed the drug test and been banned for 2 years, and it was Amanda Lemos. So there's not much leg to stand on there. Yes, drug testing is shit. If you didn't know, because of human rights and human error, people are given the benefit of the doubt 3 times a year with USADA. You get 3 random tests where you don't turn up where you said you'd be. And on the 3rd one, they punish you. But that's happened once, ever, in the history of the USADA deal. And this is the way that all random drug testing works across the world. When the Jamaican sprinting team disappears to the other end of the island for 2 weeks and misses 1, maybe 2 drug tests, no one hears about it. Very hard to miss 3 random drug tests because drug testing is incredibly expensive and they're not going to book 3 in the space of 2 weeks unless you're very unlucky. With that being said, you still have guys managing to get popped for Turinabol, which is an East German era steroid. And you're going, well, the ones that have had the most time for people to work out how to detect, probably not your best choice of steroid there, mate. But Manel Kape managed to get caught for that this week. But anyway, I will not have a bad word said about my jacked princess, Jessica Andrade, because she was getting beat up in this fight. She wasn't getting close to Amanda Lemos, and Lemos was skewering her with front kicks, as Cyborg was doing to her opponent. But I will talk about that on the Boycast, because I need to finish watching that fight. But the way that Jessica Andrade got this done was incredible. She managed to parry one of the front kicks, having been hit by 2 of them, missed parrying the other ones. She managed to parry it. She ran in, collided with Amanda Lemos, and got her head underneath Lemos' armpit in a standing katagatame, a standing arm triangle, but a position you see quite a lot in Muay Thai. Like that's about the best it gets in the clinch in Muay Thai. Because you're not going to get around behind someone, and if you get around behind them, what's the point? You're not going to get any knees off to their back. But if you get underneath their armpit and you lock your hands together like that, and you've got your head driving into them, you have that whole side of the body that's completely exposed, and you can start hammering in curved knees to the rib cage. But it is also a legit, but also kind of bullshit, but also legit submission, the standing arm triangle. And the guy who got famous for it was Marlon Sandro, who you will remember as Jose Aldo's crying corner man from the Conor McGregor fight. That is what he's been relegated to. This dude was Jose Aldo's training partner through Jose Aldo's prime. He was like the old man of the gym, but they came up about the same time. Marlon Sandro was having mad success on the other side of the world in like Sengoku, which was like a Pride follow-up that no one really remembers, but was quite fun. But he was having crazy success, and there was a point where you could have made an argument that Jose Aldo's number 1 in the world, Marlon Sandro must be number 2. And then he just fell off a cliff, like he just started losing all the time. And then he got charged with attempted murder against his girlfriend. And I don't know how that turned out. I don't know if he's still on trial or whatever. But in his prime, he had a couple of really cool arm triangles finishes. One of them standing, just falling backwards into closed guard. And then one of them, he got the arm triangle along the fence, and he basically did like a large outside reap, the Zabit throw, the Piotr Yan throw. The Piotr Yan failed it the other day, and Alexander Volkanovski did succeed it against the Korean Zombie. But that one where you take him over the back of your leg. And you can do that from that standing arm triangle. And so Marlon Sandro has a couple of finishes from there, but not necessarily standing. He has one standing one. So this was the first one in the UFC, which is incredible. And the way that Lemos tapped, and the moment Andrade let go, she fell on the floor. That's dope, because you know that she was going out otherwise. Not to accuse anyone of tapping early or anything like that, but just in case you were wondering if it was a bullshit position and she's just squeezing her and hurting her neck. No, she fell down afterwards because she was losing blood to her brain. So yeah, amazing win for Jessica Andrade. Continues to be an all-timer in women's MMA. And continues to be flawed but wonderful. So what else was good on this card? Charles Jourdain versus Lando Venata. We all thought that was going to be a banger. It condensed banger into a very small space because it did not go long. But Lando Venata, I was really surprised because every time Jourdain kicked, Lando Venata parried it and came back with something of his own, and he almost always caught Jourdain, caught him slipping. Bay caught me slipping. Because Jourdain, like, he's a very fun fighter, he's a very active fighter, he does interesting things, but he can be bullied. You can get up in his face and make him sort of panic and go backwards, which is what Julian Erosa did so well in Jourdain's last loss. And then Venata hit a beautiful takedown. I think it was a high crotch and came up on the double. He just like hoisted him into the air, got him down, and he got into side control, and Jourdain was holding the guillotine. And I was going, oh, that's a bit weird, because you're always putting yourself in danger of the Von Flue choke there. Though some people have had success holding onto an arm-in guillotine. Luke Rockhold versus Chris Weidman is a great example, and the Danaher team do that from time to time. Or, a really deep cut here. John Moraga used to get, like, guys would mount him while he was holding onto the guillotine, and then he'd buck his hips and get him back to butterfly guard and finish. But here, Venata passed to side control. Jourdain held on to the guillotine, ended up turning his back, and then getting back up to the feet and separating the hands, which is, as we're always talking about, the dichotomy there. You know, you want to pass the guard to start working for submissions and working for better top positions. And also, once you pass the guard, you are largely safe from submissions, though we're going to talk about a buggy choke attempt this weekend. But as soon as the guy goes to all fours, he's going to get up. In MMA, at least. In jiu-jitsu or grappling, they'll just put their back to the mat and try and gram you back to guard again, which would be preferable for the top guy in MMA. But yeah, they go back to taking chunks out of each other on the feet. Venata goes to cross-check same side check a left body kick from Jourdain, doesn't arrive, and then he goes to kick and gets caught on one leg by a good left straight by Jourdain, and ends up falling to the mat, does what everyone immediately does when they get knocked down. Well, if they're really hurt, they try and like stand up to their feet immediately and get knocked out in the process. But smart fighters, when they're hurt, they immediately go in on the leg. Downside is, you give up your head. Jourdain wraps the neck, and ends up on his back, but with the neck fully wrapped with one hand. Double enclosure, that's what Danaher calls it, which I'll use because it's not a random Japanese phrase that he's just decided to appropriate. But yeah, if you ever watch Gordon Ryan, if you watch Craig Jones's rolling footage on Count Films, or I think they've got their own B-Team YouTube channel now, but he's always choking people with effectively a one-handed guillotine, because he gets the double enclosure, which is basically point of your elbow underneath their windpipe, like it would be for a rear naked choke, so it's like a front naked choke. And you can join up your hands and go for the high elbow guillotine and so on, or go Buddha fist for the power guillotine, as Jourdain did here. But you'll see Craig Jones and Gordon Ryan in his guillotine finishes. What they'll do is they'll wrap over the opponent's other arm with their free arm, and it looks like they're doing an arm-in guillotine with their hands together, but actually one hand is doing all the choking with the bicep under the windpipe, and the other arm is wrapping like an overhook, like in boxing. When you don't want the guy to punch, you just wrap the overhook and pull it in. So that's how Jourdain got him, and it was so it was so difficult for Venata to do anything about, and basically that last bit was just him trying to fight through the guillotine and hope that Jourdain either released it a bit because he didn't think he had it, or trying to go to his back. Ended up pantsing himself, trying to slip his hips free and go to his back. It's always interesting to think, like, what happens if he did get free from that. How late in scrambling does the ref go, okay, now stop, we're going to pull your trousers back up. Your britches. So great win for Jourdain. It was really sad because Venata was looking really good up until that point, but it was only a 2-minute match, so he didn't lose that much good work in the loss. But he has a banging teep. The lead leg push kick from Venata. Still, he used to do it to the lead leg all the time. But he brought that up to the body a couple of times in this fight, and he's sending Jourdain flying. And he does that thing where we were always talking about with the rhythm step, where he bounces his lead leg back to his rear leg and then picks it up. So it's almost like he's jumping from behind himself into the kick. What else was good on here? I thought Macy Barber gave a really good account of herself, as in, like, what excited me about her in the first place. I always thought, very flawed in a number of ways, but kind of like Aspen Ladd, there were things about her that were quite exciting, and with both of them, it was striking out of the clinch, being quite strong in the clinch, and also striking out of it. Macy Barber, if you watch her first UFC fight, she chins some lass with an elbow coming out of the clinch and just keeps swinging on her. And she actually hits pretty well when she's standing still, just unloading on someone. Her issues have been trying to be a boxer, kickboxer, and getting into the Johnny Walker. Yeah, those feints are working really well, Johnny. Keep using them; they'll win you rounds. That sort of stuff. And really, in this match, she wasn't dominating the clinch at all, but by striking effectively from the clinch, while Montana De La Rosa was just wrestling, she took herself ahead and won it. It's been a long time since she had a convincing decision win, so that's good. Oh, Claudio Puelles, or I can't even remember how we're supposed to say his name, Puelles, beat Clay Guida in the co-main, and he did it by dope-ass knee bar, after dope-ass grappling sequence with an omoplata that looked like it was... I was going, ooh, where's he going from here? Because his arm's almost up behind his back and he can't really do much, but Clay Guida did manage to sort of stand out of it. And the knee bar from bottom half guard, apparently he's got 3 in the UFC now, which is unheard of. I remember Sherdog used to have a Fight Finder feature where you could find number of wins by technique. So armbar, it was like the top... Sakuraba was in the top 5, I remember, because he has a really surprising number of armbars. Actually, not surprising. If you know Sakuraba, you know that his thing was the armbar. But knee bars was always Oleg Taktarov. I think in his total MMA career, he had 5 or 6. But Puelles did the standard half guard entry. It's one of those ones where if you enter it and you get it wrong, you end up on the bottom getting smashed. But you do see guys who are very good at it. Craig Jones has done it, numerous times. Craig Jones has 3 different leg entry from the bottom half guard that start the same way. So he'll go all the way under and invert onto the other leg while you're thinking about the leg that's trapped. But yeah, if you watch him do the entry, it's fantastic. He underhooks the leg that he's going for, framing in the armpit with his free hand to stop Clay Guida from grabbing his head and dropping his weight on him and sprawling away. And then he kicks his leg through, and as his leg goes through underneath Clay Guida's armpit, he kicks the back of his knee and hamstring up into Clay Guida's armpit to push Guida off the leg that he's trying to attack. And then he uses his hand that was under the armpit, he moves it back to Clay Guida's face to push him even further away. And then he's fully on the leg while Clay Guida's not got any weight on it. And Clay Guida tried to jump through and roll and start defending, but in the course of rolling, his leg was fully extended by the time he landed. Knee bar's a really interesting one, particularly in this current sort of no-gi grappling meta, because you'll see them quite a lot. And certainly when you're rolling, you get hit with them quite a lot when you're in sort of heel hook scrambles, because you'll be trying to straighten your legs so you're not getting heel hooked and slip your knee line outside of their control. And in the course of that, you can get caught with really tight, what are called lat knee bars, where you put the heel behind your armpit and then arch your hips through, and they come on so quick. A great example is Gary Tonin versus Halleck Gracie, when he was doing his, I think it was the very last Metamoris, where he was like, buy tickets to Metamoris so I can pay all the grapplers that I haven't paid previously. But yeah, that one, he starts rolling to safety, and Tonin just puts him in the lat knee bar, and it's so tight that if Tonin weren't really paying attention and taking care, he could have just blown that dude's knee in half. What else did I enjoy? Barry Alt versus Jordan Wright was fun. Not anything really noteworthy in that. What's his name? Kadosko? Sergey and Dwight Grant had a fun little scrap where they both hurt each other. And it was the lines again, because Sergey Kadosko kept catching him with the jab, but then in the start of the second round, he jabs and Dwight Grant swings the right hand across the top. And Kadosko's going it with such confidence that he just walks onto the overhand and gets slumped. But then he came back and finished it. And Dwight Grant could not get away from the left hook. There were like 3 or 4. The commentary team didn't even seem to pick up on where Grant would throw a big bomb, a little left hook would like slap his chin, and his behavior would completely change for the next 30 or 40 seconds. Tyson Pedro versus Ike Villanueva. I mean, it's nice to see Tyson Pedro back. He had a bit of a reputation, certainly with me, for snatching defeat from the jaws of victory previously. He's a very talented... He's a guy who, if you saw him on some kind of MMA draft or something, you'd go, yeah, I'm having him. He's got all the good signs. And yet he still somehow loses to like old man Shogun and stuff. But he's been off for a long time with an injury and came back. Lovely low kicks in this one. Not only calf kicks to the outside, but step up inside low kicks. He went step up inside low kick to step up body kick off the same side. He was doubling his kicks, which is very Bangkok ready behavior. But Ike Villanueva, man, I mean, they said his coach is Derek Lewis's coach, so it was just the two of them doing kickboxing rounds against each other because they're both massive. I can imagine he doesn't have to deal with a lot of good low kicks because Derek Lewis can't check a fucking low kick either. They both have this thing where if you watch the kick that really hurt him at the end of the fight, they both have this thing where they stand with their legs almost locked and then they take the kick in the side of the knee and their knee goes in sideways. And that's the one thing you don't want to happen when you're taking a kick. You could take a kick any way you want, but not like lateral pressure on the side of your knee. And I really liked in the last, that was the big low kick hurt him, and he backed onto the fence. And Tyson Pedro came in, faked the low kick. Villanueva went to pick his leg up or something, and Tyson Pedro hit him with a 1-2, and then he bounced back and threw the low kick again anyway. That's, what's his name? Is it Khabib? Something or other. He's the guy who brought the calf kick to American Top Team. He put out an instructional, and basically all his techniques for landing the low kick, the calf kick, were, I enter with my 1-2 or my 1-2-3, and then I jump back and then I throw the calf kick on the way or after I've jumped back, because the opponent will almost inevitably come to try and get me, and that's when you hammer him in the leg. Arichi Leng was great against Cameron Else. Palm down left hook to the body. What's not to love about that? Very Gennady Golovkin. And then the rest of it was kind of... Oh, no, sorry, we've got to have a laugh about Dean Barry versus Mike Jackson. I have spent the entire week being like, what? About this Dean Barry stuff? Because I think once you're an Irish fighter who is at all signed to the UFC or anything like that, there is a big Irish MMA press now, with Severe and Pete Carroll and Sean... and all those guys, and of course the Mac Life and stuff like that. But, a lot of those guys were covering MMA before the Conor McGregor explosion, and it was nice for them to be able to have that Conor McGregor explosion. But also now it just means that there's a Irish MMA press that is desperate for any, glimpse of Irish MMA hope. It's why Peter Queally keeps getting tons of coverage. I mean, it's why Bellator have basically locked in SBGI. If another prospect comes through SBGI, he's always going to end up in Bellator. Which is why it's so weird that Dean Barry ended up in the UFC with 4-1 record. He was with SBGI, and then I think he left SBGI after getting signed. So I have no idea what the deal was. People looking at this guy and be like, he's amazing. People were saying, comparing him to Wonder Boy and stuff. And then he got in there and quite literally the worst fighter in the UFC on the male side of the promotion. Because they brought him in to give a competitive fight to CM Punk. And Mike Jackson did, ultimately, CM Punk had nothing for him, but that was the point of bringing him in. He's never beaten anyone else on the roster, and he made Dean Barry really struggle, which was not a great sign. Hits him with a back kick to the cup, hit him in the cup another time, actually, and then comes out of a clinch, pushing with his finger hooked into Mike Jackson's eye. No doubt about that being a foul. You can say it happened by accident or in the heat at the moment, but he dug his finger into the guy's eye and curled it. That doesn't happen that often. And when you do see it happen, people are freaking out deep in chokes. Where you could maybe allow them that slip of awareness. But this was just a regular exchange. I mean, I liked his sidekick. That was cool. But yeah, just swinging and overcommitting to everything and looked slow, really slow. Now, granted, there's the issue of like adrenaline dumps and things like that, and people do react badly to being on the big stage sometimes, especially with that level of experience, which is, he's only had a few fights. It's just that I didn't see how he was much different to that random guy who had success in point fighting / semi-contact kickboxing competitions that they brought in to fight MVP, who had like 3-4 fights. And we all went, that's a horrible mismatch. So yeah, I don't know why this was in the UFC. I don't know why. I mean, maybe they owed Mike Jackson a fight because he technically won his last one, but then he did get the no contest. It was just super weird. If anyone could shed some light on what's going on there, please do. So hopping over to Bellator because there was some fun stuff on there, or some interesting stuff at least. I mean, I got a lead with my boy Kyoji Horiguchi losing a 5-round decision to Patchy Mix. Patchy Mix is a guy who I didn't have a huge amount of hype for. I saw his fight with James Gallagher and I just went, what is this? Because it was just two guys jumping on guillotines and rolling over each other. No really quality striking, no real quality wrestling. But people have been hot on him for a while, so I gave him a chance. And against Kyoji Horiguchi, I thought he looked really quite good. Basically won this fight on back control, which was super interesting when Big John gave him a 10-8 in the first round, having held back control for the whole first round and not taken a strike, but also not delivered any strikes. And 2 weeks ago, Big John was like, Piotr Yan probably beat Aljamain Sterling. You're like, well, you didn't give 10-8s for the 2 rounds that he was on the back the entire time? But you know by now, Big John is Bellator's correspondent from senility. Mix closed him down well in the first round, went for a 1-2, I think he went southpaw 1-2-3, cornered him, got back body lock and then hopped on the back. Didn't come close to the choke, not like Jared Brooks with Massignane the other day. Wasn't actively looking for the choke that much or recycling the hands much, but was dominating. Other rounds were a bit more competitive. Mainly just saw like Horiguchi is a flyweight, which we've said for quite a while. I was pretty much waiting for Horiguchi to go back to flyweight until he beat Darian Caldwell. And then I was like, oh, wow, okay, well, Darian Caldwell's massive. So if he pulled that off, maybe he can pull off a proper bantamweight run. Obviously, he's coming off beating up Sergio Pettis for all but one strike and then got knocked out with a spinning back fist coming out of the clinch, which was awesome. But in this one, you saw a lot of him like punching up, and it really did seem like it was taking some of the stank off his blows because Patchy Mix was taking him fine, being completely unfazed, and his own hands were looking pretty sharp. He was, it wasn't like he was swinging for Horiguchi, it's like he was tracking his head really well. If you watched any time Horiguchi entered with a body kick or a little blitz in to throw an overhand or something like that, he'd get tagged with a little right straight and a jab afterwards. And that's something that you often hear talked about, like the effect that punching up has on your punching power. It's very uncomfortable. It shortens your your reach slightly because you're not going straight from the shoulder, and you tend to have to step in deeper to try and do it. But when he's throwing low kicks, he's taken out, mixed his legs, still had great power on him. Lots of little things in this fight from Horiguchi, just the lovely little bursting in techniques. He'll bounce himself in two-footed, and then he'll lunge, which is the way that point karate stuff works. You bounce with both feet, and then you bounce forward so that both feet are under you, normally drawing your back foot up as you do it, and then you spring off the back foot into a thrust like you would for fencing, or a Kazamazuki, a jab in karate, or you go into your right hand, or you go into a little punching blitz. And what Horiguchi's been doing lately, particularly after the Kai Asakura loss, he battered Kai Asakura in the rematch by going bounce, step, bounce in, step, and then throw the calf kick off that. So that's about the longest weapon you'll be able to use in MMA because you're prefacing it with all that bouncing and bursting, and then the burst is to plant your foot and then throw a kick around that. But he did another nice one, which was bounce. When Caldwell went southpaw, he'd go bounce up, step up, outside low kick, so calf kick with the lead leg, which was really nice too. Really, this just came back to to the criticism that I always had of Horiguchi in the UFC. Man, doesn't he give up his back for long periods at a time? In this one, it's a bit fairer because I think Mix made this happen a lot more. Whereas in the old days, Horiguchi used to swing, go past someone, and they'd just grab onto his back. And then he'd end up standing against the fence with them on his back for the whole round. Happened numerous times in his UFC run prior to going to ATT. Oh, and I have to shout out the Patchy Mix guillotine because, like I said, the James Gallagher fight, I was going, these knobheads, just grabbing guillotines on each other and rolling over the top. But he was underneath Horiguchi in bottom half guard, grabbed the head, and Horiguchi had to jump to try and get the pressure off his neck. So he jumped to bottom position, and Mix came up on top. So very legit guillotine on Mix. Anything else I liked on this card? Oh my god, there was a whole nother Bellator card I didn't watch. Carmouche versus Velasquez, and had Enrique Berzola, and Weber Almeida, he got a low kick TKO. Oh man, I need to go and find that then. Oh fuck, I haven't watched Rufon Stotts versus Juan Archuleta yet, need to do that. And Yancy Medeiros had a fun fight against Emmanuel Sanchez, which was weird to watch because Emmanuel Sanchez is a featherweight coming up, Yancy Medeiros is a welterweight coming down. But this was in Hawaii, and they got mad excitement for it. You know, you're never going to get a UFC pay-per-view in Hawaii, because they don't like to do it on different time zones unless they do a 5 a.m. start or 5 a.m. main event in the UK. And Hawaii, you're going the other way time zone wise, aren't you? So they'd have to do the main event like in the hang on. Whatever. It would be at a weird time. And that's why they'll never do it. But they should be doing a UFC fight night there because you got such a big MMA community. And you got Max Holloway on your cards, one of your biggest stars. One of your biggest stars when you were still giving out pay-per-view buy rates. But they're still ducking that whenever possible. Right, let's do a question, and then we'll get out of here for today. Dear Jack Slack, is there any merit in the following reasoning? There would be fewer boring lay and pray fights if the fighters were paid a guaranteed sum instead of getting win money. When half of the fighter's income is reserved as win money, the fighters have a significant financial incentive to win as easily and safely as possible. Even if a fighter is winning a stand-up fight, they could still get hurt and even lose in an instant. See Edwards versus Diaz. I mean, is that a great example? Wonderboy versus Pettis. Or if a fighter gets a takedown and spends the entire round controlling top position, it is unlikely that they will get submitted from guard or knocked out with strikes from the bottom. The wrestler is still winning the round, but he is also minimizing the risk that he could lose half his income in any given exchange. Given the explosive anything-can-happen nature of a fight, it seems logical that simply controlling top position would be an attractive and profitable strategy for a man who is trying to make a living. This might also create a catch-22 for fighters, because people can perceive, sometimes reasonably, their fights as boring. This is like me couching all my Bilal criticism with, some people fairly think this fight was boring. As a result, fewer people tune in for that fighter, and the UFC does not promote that fighter. If the fighter is not a big draw, they will likely have less leverage with which to negotiate their contract, even if they are talented. The fighter may make less money in the long run by fighting safely and boringly. Maybe this is all a symptom of the UFC's pay structure, wherein every fighter, in addition to being a professional athlete, must also try to be a star or draw in order to earn real money. From Tyson. I'm pretty much in favour of, if not a flat show fee and then a flat finishing bonus for everyone on the card, I think you need to get better proportions on show and win money, because half of your income is if you lost half your income for it's not going to be a quarter probably for most. Actually, no, most fighters get a fight in. Well, an active UFC fighter gets in 3-4 fights a year, so we'll say quarterly. If you lost half your income for a quarter, based on a reckless decision that you made just on the spur of the moment, or because you thought they would make someone else happy, that would be devastating to you. That would be devastating to anyone. And I think most fighters think of themselves as definitely going to win anyway. So they account for having that money even before they've got it. And then obviously if you lose, you get half of that. And I think that's devastating. You've lost half your money in an instant, or maybe you get your ass kicked from pillar to post, but you shouldn't be getting half of what. Well, I mean, are we going to get into what people are worth and all that stuff? That fucking extracted value or stolen value or whatever. But it does seem pretty fucking backwards. in this day and age to offer someone, it's not even offering someone double the money that if they win. It's more that you're taking half the money if they lose. And you watch people like Matt Brown and whoever in the world fight at a professional level. They do not. There's this like sick feeling in some fight circles where you like have to keep the fighter hungry. And do you know people? Do you know how much they love money and buying things? People like when Matt Brown was saying that he would prefer a flat fee than a show and win system, immediately after a fight where he just put on a barn burner, like always, people were in the comments going like, "Oh, he wants a participation trophy or something." You know, it is absurd to think that Matt Brown would fight like less passionately if he got a flat purse and then a finishing bonus that everyone on the card got. Like if you did a 50k, I mean, you could do a 50k. They won't. They would never do this because they want to scrape as much money out as possible. But if you did the 50k bonus for every finish as a standard, I know they don't like calling it knockout of the night. That's why they moved away from it and started calling it performance bonuses. But when was the last time someone won a decision and got a performance bonus? If you gave out a flat 50k or even 25k bonus for every finish, that incentivizes finishing. That incentivizes fighting in a way where, the way that is exciting. People trying to finish fights don't fight as boring as people who are trying to win decisions. It's just how that works. It's the carrot and the stick thing. I don't think you need to threaten someone that they'll lose half their money if they don't win, when you could just incentivize them to finish and also give them a living wage. It's not rocket science, but it's this weird old school thinking where fighters have to be hungry, and fighters won't be hungry if you give them even like a fair pay. If you give them an inch in negotiations. But some of the fighters in the UFC even have managed to negotiate themselves to a better split. I believe Overeem, because honestly, heavyweights have a fantastic time negotiating with the UFC anyway. Like Brendan Schaub was earning hundreds of thousands of dollars from the UFC, and he wasn't, particularly special in terms of like ability as a heavyweight. Matt Mitrione's another one, was making hundreds of thousands of dollars from the UFC. It's a good position to be in, to be a decent heavyweight in the world. But Overeem, I believe, managed to negotiate it so that he was getting a larger part of his total pay in show money and a smaller portion in win money. And he wasn't known really for fighting boring. The man had like a 90% finishing rate, or getting finished rate. The other one I always talk about is like Georgie Karakhanyan, the guy in Bellator. He gets 70k show money, or he was a while ago. And that, that sounds like a lot, and that's good that he gets that money. But that's only 35 and 35, really, if you consider show and win. Yeah, the promoter's paying out more money, but it's not a whole lot more in the grand scheme of the promotion. And Karakhanyan has pretty interesting fights. He goes out there and he either gets slept or sleeps the opponent. I think like with most things, it is just desperately trying to squeeze as much profit out of fighters and this deal as possible. With that being said, wins still mean a lot to these guys. Like, I think that you could offer John Fitch all the money in the world to finish a fight and he would still be more concerned with winning the fight, whether he was worried about losing half his purse or not. A lot of these guys are full-on competitors who don't really have a very interesting way to fight. Grinding out wins is just as legitimate as, smoking people in one round. Which is why it's quite interesting what the PFL is doing, where they're incentivizing early finishes. So you get 3 points for a win, 4 points for a third round finish, 5 points for a second round finish, 6 points for a first round finish. And I said last time we were talking about this, like, it hasn't really worked because Lance Palmer has never finished anyone and he keeps winning their tournaments. But it seems like a good way of incentivizing exciting fighting and risk taking. I don't know. As long as wrestlers see this as a legitimate way to earn some money out of their skill that they've spent their entire lives crafting and being paid literally nothing for, there are going to be people who will just hold for wins. But I do believe it's pretty offensive to like the intelligence and the integrity of fighters themselves to be like, well, we have to pay them half and half because otherwise they won't try and win. People who don't try to win either don't win and then don't end up in the UFC for very long, or they win anyway and they are just that good. So, they're still running through people. It's very strange logic that they use to try and justify this sketchy-ass system. Cheers, Tyson. Right, I reckon that'll do us for today. I'll be back midweek. I believe there's a PFL on, and there's a KSW I've got to catch up on, and a whole nother Bellator card that I said I'd watch, not knowing that there were 2 this weekend, because it was like the Suck the Troops Dicks card. They're still doing that, like, say thank you to the troops stuff at every opportunity, because they really are like 2006 UFC. But I'll watch it and I'll let you know how I feel. But PFL was really good last week, so I'm looking forward to this week. And I'm back on answering the emails, so hopefully get a couple more of those done on Boycast too. I'm your boy Jack Slack. If you want to get in on the Boycast and the extra articles and support the podcast, sign up to the Patreon. If you want to send an email to the podcast, jackslackpodcast@gmail.com. And if you want to see what I'm writing at any time, fightprimer.com. I've already said I'm your boy Jack Slack. Mike Jackson's body hair obscuring his tattoos, bless.